Channel. There we go. I'm live.
Boom.
All right.
Success.
It's working. Bam. Just like that.
Satisfying, isn't it? Tech.
All right. Now, what should I call you? Should I call you
I'm Dr. Degen, but it's truly, I'm just John, right? It's just, I had to have a name when this first started, and I was Dr. Simon, and I'm not named Simon or a doctor. It just so happened that my buddy was Dr. Garfunkel when I started video game at the 30. So it was like, well, I'll be Dr. Simon, you know what I mean? And then this happened, and I was like, I guess I should have something that's like, you know, because I didn't do video games to blow up on Twitch. It happened because of the crypto thing and Wall Street bets and stuff. And so I didn't want to be putting myself out there as a doctor, really, and trying, like, you know what I'm saying? So I had to, like, do something that was a play on words and stuff. And so I kind of landed with that. But everyone calls me Doc or John.
All right. Nice. Okay. So now let me get you to do one thing, because I look at your screen and I think what you're going to, oh, no, that's fine. That works. That, in fact, on your screen, you just have me in the upper corner, and that works just fine. All right.
Yeah, this is how, like, the Degen Dive Bar. It's funny. You made a comment before we get into it. You made a comment in an interview a while back about saying how you look at Twitch like Cheers, how it's a community and it's like Cheers, like the bar. And I was like, it resonated because obviously I'm the Degen Dive Bar. Like, this is my first scene forever. So people just come in all day and say what's up, and it's just like, yep, that's exactly what it's like. Exactly what it is. People know your name.
I have to go ahead and fix my title because I'm messing with my mods. At one point, I was always going to do this collaboration with John, and then I was going to transition to Lord Kirk and Hutch, but they are busy. Okay. So good. Weekly music stream, that works. And the title is fine. We're just going to be just chatting to start, and then we'll switch to music later. Okay. Just chatting. So for the folks coming in, John or Dr. Degen had asked me to come on. He's got his little dive bar. I want him to come on and say hi. He asked me a while ago, right?
Yeah, a while ago. Yeah, you came up organically in a stream. Like, we were like, I don't know exactly why your name came up, but we were looking you up, and then I was reading your resume. I got to give you your flowers. Your background is really fucking impressive.
Hold on, they're saying like, I am muted. Why is Dan muted? Hold on a second.
Oh,
you can hear me.
I can, and I think stream can hear you,
but my stream can't hear me. Okay, let me do one thing here.
Oh, now you're muted here. Oh God, no. And so that was the interview with Dan. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was great. I think he's click my mic. Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, I got you. I'm muted. There we go. I think we're good again. It might take a second. I've unmuted you. Should be good. Nothing.
All right. Oh, now you should be able to hear me, right?
I can. Yep.
Okay, let's see if my stream can hear me. My stream, can you hear me?
I just want to point out this was seamless when I tried it earliar. I felt so confident coming in this.
It often is. They're little quirks. In this case, this is a bug that has happened, but it looks like it's working now, right? So everyone on my stream. All right, and first, so I need to say hi to everyone on my stream. I didn't start streaming before, and they didn't get to hear me when I explained. So I had talked with John or Dr. Degen. He had asked me a while ago to come and hang in his dive bar for a little while. I said yes. So we put it on the calendar. I actually hadn't heard from him, so I was like, I wonder if we're still doing it. And he pinged me, and I was going to ping him. So we're just going to hang and chat for a little while, and then I'm going to transition to my regular stream. Actually, TJ Brown wanted to chat for a while. I might chat with TJ Brown, his music producer. And I'm not going to be doing anything with Lord Kirk or Hutch. We may drop in on some other people. But the big thing I want to note for everyone, okay, is I have a fancy schmancy new camera. So, Dr. Degen, usually I go with this old webcam, and I now finally installed this Sony cam. So now I don't look nearly as crappy.
Dude, watch, the followers are going to drop off now because they're all about the growth. Now you're there, you're big, you're bougie. You've changed. Success has changed you.
Does Dr. Degen do any Tyler Childers? I don't think he does. I
love some Tyler Childers, though.
Well, then maybe I'll have to do a Tyler Childers song for you.
Dude, I love some country now.
Oh, good. Well, then, have you seen any of my streams where I sing?
I have. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, maybe. So why don't you tell my folks a little bit about your stream?
So, I mean, my stream is essentially I didn't get on Twitch to become a streamer. I got discovered, legit. People just showed up one day, and apparently Elon Musk came in here, and a bunch of people hung out and said. So we started the Church of Elon Musk, official, and started doing crypto, prayer and all kinds of craziness when it first blew up. But I was literally just hanging out, and I used it because I had 3 people extra on my video game group of friends who couldn't play the game because there was not enough people, and they would just hang out on Twitch to watch me while I was playing with the other friends and jump in. And then one day, Dogecoin and all those coins were going crazy, and I used to work in finance. I did my degrees in finance and economics, and my buddy was like, "Hey, you should stream it. Put the thing up." And I was like, "Oh, you think people would care?" And he put it up, and I put it up, and I was the only person in the crypto board game section. And he posted, it was the day that Discord opened Wall Street Bets for Reddit, their Discord for it, when GME and all that squeeze was happening. And he posted a link, and next thing you know, 800 people showed up. and I was like, hey guys. And then next thing, 1,000. And then by the time Elon was on Saturday Night, it was a couple thousand people in here, just I'm sitting here star-eyed, what? I had $20 to my name. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there what is going on?
Elon dropped in.
Apparently, yeah, that's the rumor. That's the rumors are that he came through, did a few tweets. There were some donations that were really cryptic in dates. It was a big old fun thing to do. And so that was the rumor. So we started the Church of Elon Musk and had some fun with it,
Yep.
But, as crypto dies, we found our own niche and just messed around. And so now I just, I other than this, I'm actually a crisis actor for the U.S. Special Forces. So I'm actually a real LARPer, a live action role player for the Green Beret program.
So you're a crisis actor for the U.S. Special Forces.
Yeah. Like I said, I quit finance, and so now I just
What is a crisis actor for the U.S.?
So I essentially just quite literally that live action, like a LARPer. I go out and pretend to be, Durka, or I'll go get kidnapped or do a drug deal with the police downtown and get surveilled. Essentially, crisis acting, essentially, right? Stuff that involves. So
they basically, what they do is they have you, but you play a part in the real world, or just on the base?
No, in the real world. Yeah. These contracts, some of these contracts are so fun. I cannot describe to you. Some of these things, you are with a machine gun laying in the bushes like this, while people are walking on the sidewalk, and they have no idea that training is going on in town. And you're just it's absolutely, the fact they pay us as civilians to do it. There are some contracts where I cannot believe we're getting paid to do this. I mean, every contract we're that way, but because you get to go play with guns and, die. And anytime there's a military operation that they're paying you to, mess on helicopters and do stuff. But yeah, it's a blast. It's a blast. I get to stream out there too now. I'm in a position to where, I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now. And so at certain contracts, they'll let me stream in the evenings and stuff. And so I get to take the community where, yeah, it's fun.
I want to say, it's a little unsettling.
Yeah. Dude, right. But essentially, it's to get some clarification there, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, they do, have wars in the backwoods of North Carolina and, on the East Coast. And essentially, it's just that, they have to create a scenario for the final graduation for these guys. And you can't have a bunch of military guys as the people they meet when they land in an indigenous place, right? You have to have a bunch of weirdos who don't look military-esque. And so they hire civilians for that who are woodsy, and, we can teach them how to, prep food and shit like that. You know what I mean? I'm outdoorsy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we just kind of just split the markets. I'm an older community. We're kind of older people, right? We watch the rest of Twitch, looking at grumbling old man. My time, we didn't do that.
Meaning, I would fit in a little bit. I'm still a little old for your crowd, but another.
I don't know. Most of our guys, I'm probably one of the younger guys. Most of my guys are retired, or they watch the markets all day. We're kind of up there. Like I said, because the finance angle, you feel. But
Right. So a lot of times y'all chat about the markets and what the heck's happening.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, essentially what's happening in the world, geopolitics, all of that. You know, like I said, I worked in finance for a little bit there. So I have some introspect into how the actual markets function and, you know, the CBDCs, the crypto side of it, like just the actual tech side of it, not the crap, you know, the line charts, but actual tech behind it. But I got to ask you, so to shift gears here, I got to ask you, how did you, because what took me at first about you is you did a PhD in AI in the mid-90s.
I did.
Most people didn't know how to combine those two letters in the mid-90s to make that combination. Like, what inspired you to go from the greatest, I should say, state of North Carolina for your undergrad to like honing in on that specific niche in the 90s, no doubt. Like, just to put out there.
Well, the interesting thing is AI. I think it'll liken itself. I think it will probably happen with Web3. Actually, in the 80s and early 90s, AI was kind of hip and cool. Okay. So it hadn't had an impact, but it wasn't quite as popular as Web3, but it was like, oh, AI. And so when I chose to go get my PhD, I actually just chose to go get my PhD. I wasn't choosing to go get it in AI. I decided I wanted to get a PhD in computer science. I had double majored in theater and computers undergrad. I didn't spend a lot of time in computers on my undergrad. I kind of took the bare minimum over classes. I did a lot of theater. I did music. I did lots of liberal arts. And then when I got out, I went ahead and got a job using my computer degree. And after a few years, I said, well, I want to understand more about computers just to be see how they work. So I went to get my PhD and I just was choosing between distributed systems and I chose AI. It wasn't I've never been one of these ideologues that says, I see the future. I found an advisor I liked. By the time I got out, it was known as the AI winter because it had been popular. And then suddenly AI was not popular. But there's still lots going on. I enjoyed AI back then before the big boom that kind of started really, it actually started picking up again probably about the time I went to Google in 2005 and of course exploded 5 years ago.
So yeah, well that's a good segue. So you went to Google in 2005 after a career at NASA. But more specifically at their research department, right? And is there any link there with the fact that you announced that you were going there in the end of that year, a month after they announced the collab project with Google, in which essentially...
Actually, I have a funny... Yeah. I have a very funny story about that. They were unconnected, but at NASA, I was basically, there was a center director, and then I was in the next line down. So I was one of the executives. This is at NASA Ames. So basically, NASA has 7... centers, and Ames is one of their centers, and it's mostly a research center, and it's where they do most of their computer science research since it's in Silicon Valley. And I had already decided to start looking around probably about 6 months earlier because I decided, I was like, well, I kind of gotten as far as I wanted to at NASA I was like, look, I don't want to just keep doing NASA. I love NASA, but I started looking around the Valley, and interestingly, I had interviewed with Google, and I had ended up interviewing with Larry Page as the final interview before they're going to give me an offer. And then we had this meeting where Larry and Sergey came to tour NASA, and I was the host to show them around. And at that point, Larry knew that they had a job offer out to me.
And you're like,
while I was... And then after so I toured him around, and then he pulled me aside and said, well, are you going to come on board? And then I went to Google, and now I was on the Google side, and Google and NASA had these discussions about partnerships about Google building on NASA's property. And I was on the Google side now, and they'd invite me to them. And then at times,
but it was also in your wheelhouse, right? This was you were on the Mars project under Bush. So this was the collab was very specific to what you worked on too, no?
Yes. And
so how did that make you reevaluate what you were doing at that point, or?
No. Meaning that I was at Google versus still being at NASA.
Well, being involved in what you were in at Google versus what they were taking on and getting in that project, because it looked like IARPA gets set up in 2006, so they spin off some of the stuff you were probably working on at NASA to IARPA, and then Google takes that collab project.
The reality is that the partnership between Google and NASA wasn't really deep on collaboration. It was really Google wanted, to be able to build on NASA's property. NASA wanted Google to build on NASA's property, and they could only do that if they found a semblance of a collaboration. And so they had this sort of semblance of a collaboration, but really the two sides, NASA wanted Google to come because they had land that they were trying to build this, commercialize, and Google would be the perfect person, and Google, wanted to build. So the collaboration was sort of a bunch of show.
Oh, I got you. Because I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, he works at NASA and then he goes to working on OCR technology for the library aspect. I'm like, wait a minute, that seems like a very shift when they just did that. So what made you interested in sort of shifting into that kind of work from working on I guess cutting edge, NASA tech sort of development to hey, I want to put to the client side sort of service, retail facing.
Really, the difference, the interesting thing is, people act like, oh, it must have been so different between NASA and Google. And the reality is, in fact, after I left, a bunch of the computer science folks that had been at NASA Ames ended up working at Google, because really they weren't as different as you think. Okay. Yeah. Because, we did a lot of AI, autonomy, and robotics. If you look at the project I did when I first got to Google, it was this project, Google Book Search, where we were building this book scanner to scan all the world's books. And we were bringing the cost down of scanning a book from like $100 to $10. And what we were doing was building a embedded machine that worked with humans. And it was using a bunch of AI robotics technology to build a book scanner, and figuring out how to use humans. So it actually was shockingly similar to some of the stuff that, NASA had to worry about man-machine interaction. And so it's not as different as you would think when you get down to the technical level. Yeah. There's just a huge amount of overlap.
So what would the difference in AI be from then? This was early 2010s, 2010, sorry, versus now to what we see it as. Now, to be fair, I tested some AI myself inadvertently. I didn't know I had. When I first started in finance, I had a position for the market where I calculated the mortgage-backed security and CDS swap prices. And long story short, Watson, the supercomputer, the IBM AI, had just beaten Jeopardy, if you remember back in the day, or they beat the Jeopardy. Yep. Well, at the time, they turned around and went, well, how do we monetize this? And they built it, and then they were like, okay, now how do we make money? And so they came, and when the shit rolled downhill, I was the guy it landed to actually test the thing, from the directors and whatnot, because I was the only guy stateside who actually handed on the data. And so I ended up being tasked to test this AI with, passing financial information out of prospectuses and stuff. And like I say, just from that to today is night and day, right? That thing wasn't that great. Yeah. We were actually trying to rip it off. That's why they had me testing it. They didn't tell me, but later I found out we were trying to make our own versions, which is essentially a glorified parser, right? It really didn't have much, determinative logic. Whereas now what you're seeing, so I guess to rephrase that is so what's the difference you've seen in AI now versus where you were just 10 years ago working on it at the cutting edge in Google?
Obviously, and by the way, first of all, there's been huge advances with LLMs recently that have been kind of a step function, but it's sort of, and obviously the algorithms have gotten much better. The representations have gotten much better. The biggest change is we have so many more compute cycles and we have so much more data. And it's not like fundamentally the algorithms suddenly became so much different. In fact, in terms of, the reemergence of neural nets, they were popular back in the 80s and early 90s. Then they kind of went out of fashion, and then they come on strong where, much of what's been happening in AI these days is using neural nets and statistical machine learning. And the biggest difference was just now we had so much compute cycles and so much data that now when you threw the same algorithms at it, suddenly they came out with better results. And now there have been advances in the algorithm, of course, especially with LLMs and generative AI. I think generative AI did kind of make a step function forward. But I think the biggest thing is just it all coming together.
I hear that. I hear that. So I guess I don't want to skip ahead because I do want to see how the journey came to becoming CEO, right? Like did you know coming into Twitch that there was a pathway for that? Was there pre-conversations, or was this sprung on you later into your Twitch career? Did you move from, I believe the door,
yeah, I know the question. I'll go to I didn't come to Twitch with this, I'm gonna be, or I need to be, or I want to be CEO.
But was it discussed previously
in my career? There were various CEO opportunities that I considered when I left my last role and was taking some time off. But I've always been someone who was more attracted by the kind of opportunity and the scale of the impact. And I came to Twitch because I thought it was an interesting problem, and I liked the people I'd work with. I was already, when I came in, it was kind of me, Emmett, the CEO, and Sarah Clemens, and the three of us were sort of responsible for Twitch. And then Sarah moved on, and then I took over a fair amount of what she had been doing. And then it was sort of clear that if Emmett decided he wanted to transition, because I was running most of the company, but it wasn't my agenda to get there. But it happened that Emmett realized, it was the right time for him.
So at that point, you come and you take a look, and with anything, when you take, I can see in your history, you're obviously managing products, and Twitch is essentially a product, and you've described it as a talk, more of a talk platform / product. I see it as a three-pronged product, right? You have your platform, which is the talk / product, and we'll get to that and have some questions there, and then you have your ad platform, right? Which is obviously something that dictates policy, and it's a different thing, and then you have the third, which is a more subtle and would be the data, right? And as we advance, the data is the true value in why I imagine Amazon holds Twitch.
Interestingly, I actually don't think that's true with Twitch.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the thought behind that?
That is often true. That is often true with some businesses where there's this massive data that then you use for other purposes. I don't think. I mean, it's not something that generates much for us now. The reason is what you're getting is, you get a lot of data of the communities that people want to hang out in.
Yep.
Okay. But that doesn't necessarily tell you who they are, what they want to buy, all sorts of stuff, right? So really for Twitch, you talked about advertising as one of the businesses, and I do think it's valuable for Amazon to have Twitch because of an asset as they build their ads business. But in the end, Twitch at its, as I talk about, it's really about that community for people spending time together. And that's where we make our money. That's the heart of the product. Data is not really that central.
Well, as we move forward, I see. Well, I mean, as we move forward, you don't know how that'll evolve, right? And essentially, as we take those metrics and feed them into an AI, and we don't have humans reading them into them. And I see you guys obviously hiring out appliance science directors. Like you got four of them stacked up. You guys obviously trying to build out some stuff that's taking that data, right? So it's
we use AI a lot to enhance our product. So one of the biggest uses of AI is to help with AutoMod and our ability to moderate chat. Okay, because AI can be very useful in moderating chat. We obviously use AI for recommendations to help you find new streamers you might like. Okay, so we certainly use AI, but usually the kind of businesses that are centered on data, the data themselves are a business versus a source for improving the product.
Yeah.
So, if you will, all of the searches that people do on Google every day are this amazing oracle for what people are thinking and what people are doing and what's popular and what's happening.
Yep.
In other words, if you looked at the search terms for Taylor Swift, you could tell that the Era Tour was really big because, what people say on Google is very indicative of what's happening in society. And there's all these things you could figure out. When I was running Google Book Search, you could figure out from the search results that Origin of the Species was about a book about evolution, even though it didn't talk about evolution in the book. All these terms that weren't even talked about, but Google search would know and be able to find it
by
just
link
because
analysis,
of all the hyperlinks in the web.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a ton of, and that's very helpful when you start training AI models. I don't think it's quite as true with Twitch.
Fair. Yeah, honestly, that's the reason once again, one of the reasons I blew up is during that time, if the Twitch algorithm chose me, I was the only guy doing crypto. So if you typed in crypto in Twitch or in Google and you typed in crypto chat for a second, my Twitch channel came up because it was a chat that was crypto. It was the only one. Yeah. So just for a minute, it's gone now. I wish, but not anymore. And to build on that, like you said, so you are primarily, you decided, primarily the platform is that community payment processor / sub sort of build out. And so my question is that something that, if that's the core instrument, like I have a question in the sense that, like, I have guys who support me. I do this full time, right? And far smaller than the channel that probably should. But the reason I have is we're older guys, and some of these guys support me far more so than you would imagine a person does. I have benefactors. I have great benefactors, should we say. And one guy, for example, has given me $15,000, right? Which in subs, which means he's given $30,000 so he's just essentially, in exchange for having people get a little DM notification that they got a free sub from my channel, he has given $15,000 in fees for that. Is there any idea inside the management to, like, maybe put like an emo, top donators, a whale ranking board for the month? Because these guys come into another chat and you have no idea this guy is donating 5,000 subs to a small creator.
I know. It's tricky. We've often talked about that, and it's sort of this double-edged sword. First of all, not all of these people want to be seen that way when they enter a chat, okay? Because they like you. He's part of your community. He really likes you. He appreciates the acknowledgement that you give him, that the community, and it's authentic in what he's trying to do, right? As he walks around Twitch, it's not necessarily the case that people want to see a $sign next to his name, okay? Because now he becomes a target, right, of every streamer. That's like, oh, look at this guy. I need to... and he's doing it. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have to be very careful as people are doing that, not to exploit those people. We want to acknowledge those people for what they do, but we also don't want to, like, put pressure on them where they have to feel like they keep doing it, because there are a number of people that
it gets to be, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. And given that you could do these things that say, oh, give them this status, but then that becomes itself pressure, where now they have to keep it up, okay, to maintain it, which may be a good thing from a maximize profits perspective. But I do think a big part that we do think about is, but in the end, is that the right thing from a community perspective? In terms of these people that are providing so much support for you. So we've often thought of different things to do, but we also need to be careful as we do them not to exploit these.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, you know what I'm saying? Because my relationship's healthy, but in some streams, that donator relationship with the streamer could become unhealthy.
Yes, and it's nice. In fact, what you want is that healthy relationship, right? Where he feels appreciated, but he doesn't feel pressured, okay, and acknowledged. But he, and he feels like the love that he's getting isn't just because he's giving money.
I don't love these guys at all. I talk absolute smack to them all day. It's just truly they see the potential that it is. No, I'm just kidding. So it seems like I said, you made a decision to shift towards this more of a talking platform. Was there a conscious decision to get away from IRL, or because, and the reason I ask this question is it does seem there's a pattern right now in content. And this goes back to the fact that my community is kind of older and we're not like, keyed into the clickbait. And you see it with Kick, with some of these more IRL streamers where it's just a de-escalation of clickbait things happening live on camera, right? It's just, and now I think it's finally culminated in them having a fake fight recently, right? And so was it a clear decision from you guys to say, listen, we want to separate ourselves from this? And because, or is it just happen naturally?
It's probably, I wouldn't call it a clear decision. I mean, some of the transition, IRL is still a big part of Twitch. It's more that other things grew more. So, IRL still, there are lots of IRL streamers. It's probably the case, though, that the biggest streamers tend to be more gaming streamers. Of course, Kai is an example of someone that, while he isn't necessarily always IRL in the real world, he has a variant of that where he's just sitting and chatting. So, I mean, just chatting is 30% of our traffic is just chatting. The rest is gaming. There's a lot of IRL. It tends to be under just chatting. So it wasn't a clear decision. I think it is fair to say that there is a clear decision of making sure that the type of stuff that you're referring to that is on the edge of inappropriate, that we our community guidelines are important. We try to make sure that you can get stuff that I will call is interesting and edgy, but not inappropriate.
But where does current events fall under that, right? So you have like police chases, you have the war, like you have one of the things that I saw big pump in was the war in Ukraine, right? Like I said, I do geopolitics. That's one of my hobbies and things we talk about. And so every time something happens, people come in and want to know my opinion. Well, there's also big channels that all they do is have up the webcams, right? Because like you say, people want to talk when they play games. They want to talk when they watch craziness in the world. They want to talk when they're doing it all, right? So it's where do you guys fall on that when, essentially we're sitting around waiting for a rocket to go off in the background? Right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but if it's what's happening in the real world and you're not creating artificial conflict, I think it's great. I mean, obviously Hassan is one of our top streamers, and a big part of his is political commentary. And when things happen in the world, then a lot of people watch him. You talking about finance. I have no idea why. There's a lot happening in the world. The stock guy does that. I think that that's an area where it'll continue to grow, where it is, things that are happening in the real world and you're providing commentary, or interaction on top of that. And
so I guess, is there like, to build on that drama stuff, is there a clear, because we had some stuff happen with like church staff and just before your tenure, but with Trainwreck where he gave some money and then Twitch staff got it and stuff. Is there a clear consciousness within the organization, they pay your W-2 employees to separate the drama that is content, right? That is, essentially noise from work, which, because you're interacting, because they become intertwangled, right? Because that's the talent, you're interacting with these people daily and, but that's content and what's work is work, right? Is there a clear separation of that?
I think it's really important, actually. And one thing, that I've been pushing is we need to have a consistent set of policies that apply irregardless. Now, at the same time, and I'm a perfect example where, I stream, I engage a lot with streamers. It's funny, I'll start streamer, somebody coming, talk to me about an idea, I was talking to the person on G Fuel the other day. I'm planning to do this Ironman, and he was talking to me, and I said, well, let me be clear, anything that I'm doing, well, obviously I stream as part of Twitch. Okay. But as I build connections with, people because they collaborate with me, they stream with me, I don't influence then who's on the front page with them because I like them and because I get along with them. I'm like, nope, these things are completely different, and I'm very clear sometimes, that, people say, oh, what about this? I'm like, well, no, I can't do that. I have that's separate. I'm the CEO and I stream. And I think it's important to have that throughout the company, to have that separation.
There was and speaking about that, has your experience, I know you did do some work with YouTube on the algorithm back in the day, I'm sure, so it's changed, but is that in any way impacted your thoughts here and how the algorithms might work here? Or do you not in any way touch that?
There's nothing specific in terms of the algorithm. I mean, there's in general, I know a lot from having worked at YouTube, having worked at Nextdoor, having worked at Google. So all of that influences my knowledge about market, right? It might help me to make insights, about what works at Twitch to make sure we focus on the right thing. But there's nothing specific where it's like, oh yeah, here's this. As it is from that time ago, it'd just be old.
There was a beta program we did. I wonder if I could ask you. There was a beta program we did a while back, and I enjoyed the absolute crap out of it. Where it would link like an ad program you guys had done for recommended channels to your hype trains. To where if you received per the level of the hype train you would receive, you would get a boost, I guess, a certain period of time where you were put into more recommended channels. It went away, but I saw the benefit of that because, like I said, disproportionately to my viewer numbers.
Interesting. When we started working on that, Ed had been working on, and I came in, and they've been working on stuff related to that. And to be honest, I wasn't bullish on that. Although frequently I let people that believe they have an idea to explore. That's part of my role, is not necessarily to always assert my opinion. And the reason I wasn't bullish, and I think this is what played out, is in the end, our front page, like, people don't spend gobs of time on our front page. So we don't have that much control over traffic. People think, oh, just put me on and then I'll become a star. We don't make stars. Like, people spend their time on the channel page. That's where they spend their time on Twitch. I was in a room with 300 streamers and I said, all of y'all watch Twitch a lot. How many of you spend a lot of time on our discovery pages? And 2 of the 300 people raised their hands. Okay. Anyone who uses Twitch knows the reason Twitch is so good for community is because we keep people on your page. They don't sit there browsing around. And TikTok, they're always looking for the next thing, right? Because their feed is a discovery platform. And even on YouTube, you're always distracted and looking at related videos, no matter what you're doing. And on Twitch, when you're on a channel, you're on a channel. Pull up a chair, hang out a while. That's what makes community so special on Twitch. So in the end, it really didn't drive much traffic. So it actually wasn't a good use of people's money. They felt like maybe it was going to drive growth. But the answer is it wasn't driving growth. So if they were, as a finance person, like, we looked at it and said, if these people are acting rationally, they shouldn't spend their money. Of course, they don't have all the data. They might perceive something, but you don't want to have this thing that actually you're betting on them acting irrationally in terms of what's in the best interest of the streamer.
I like the ability for it to function, to give you like an ability. Because my problem is this, right? Like, I hit a meta wave, or I was discovered or whatever, right? Like, it happened. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. Like, no idea. People start inviting me to concerts, famous people trying to fly me out places, like, brands trying to get me to shield their stuff. I had no clue. There was no structure. There was nobody to say, hey, this might be happening to you in the next, like, you've gone from no viewers to thousands consistently. There's nothing. And there was no, I didn't know I had to take clips. I didn't know I had to advertise myself and do collabs. And I feel like that with the money thing, it gave me an idea of, like, that's going to allow smaller streamers to get noticed and have that sort of slow growth, if you will, and from their community. You know what I mean? There's in a sense, because I went overnight. I could kind of crash and burned, if you will, in the sense that I was too much, too fast. Whereas if you do something like that, people can slowly grow. And I kind of, at the angle I've got here is it's being quite clear that Twitch's, policy on Kick and Rumble and all these guys doing the big money transfers like it's, soccer or something, is good luck, right? Now, obviously, Kick and Rumble have figured out, hey, let's learn from Mixer here. We need their Twitch channels for traffic. So we'll let them do the whole on either side so we can try and drive traffic to our sites. But, that means that you guys are assuming you can replace from the 7 million streamer talent. Is there any cohesive program, like you have the creator program at Kick, for example, right? Do you have any cohesive program that you guys are building out, or any idea to where you're going to find that new talent, right? Like you said earlier in an interview, you said that, hey, there's a subset of people who stream casually to people like myself who just do this. This is it, right? And is there a program to build out to kind of like recognize those talents and then, feature it, or like build out from within?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, like, we have no shortage of, I think, creative people that are creating interesting content on Twitch and that are looking to grow. The limiting factor is we want more people watching, okay? Because that, in the end, is the foundation that makes you drive your business, is getting more people to watch. I do think there are things we want to do to what I'll call is increase. I often talk about the flow within Twitch, how many people are growing and like building their audiences. And I have various ideas around that. I think it all centers around collaboration. I think sometimes when you're smaller, you create programs that you can put names to and market around. But that doesn't mean they actually like cause people to grow. It's just because you're marketing it. And we've done a lot of those in the past where it didn't actually cause people to grow. And so I'm much more interested in kind of understanding, as I said, on the issue of the community boost. We could have exploited that to market it as if you're going to grow. Okay. But I knew that actually wasn't what was happening. Okay. And so I feel pretty good about our position because I think our focus needs to be on just creating a great platform to live stream. I'm very bullish on increasing collaboration. I think that will help a lot of people in terms of growth. I think the foundation of growth in live streaming is doing what we're doing right now and interacting on stream. Right now, I don't know, however many people are in my stream or watching you, and how many people in your stream are watching me. So that's the best way for more people to, see me and more people to see you.
Facts. I mean, you touched on a point there. Is the real goal here is to improve Twitch's viewership, right? And that's one of the bigger products of it from the advertising standpoint. And one of the issues you guys are seeing, I think this is honestly one of the root causes of the Kick and Rumble spinoff, right? Is that you had a demographic tailored towards a younger video game demographic, but that was freaking decade plus ago. These guys are now aging. Right, the guys in my chat now who are in their 50s started on Justin TV, right? Like your demographic and main, audiences are now aging and are looking, like you say with Hassan, and looking for different. And so you bring in a new group of kids, but at the same time, now that content has to evolve. And I think, like you saw, the more extreme content, spin off, if you will, with the gambling and all the stuff like that. But is there any? Because my problem is, the reason I'm saying this is the reason. I'm 34 years old, right? And so when I tell people, hey, I'm a partner on Twitch, they go, what's that? And then they say the video game thing, right? Like they don't know what it is in my world, because most of my friends don't play video games. They've got kids and stuff. And so, it's how do you break that away from being that Twitch, like you said, is now a talk app. And it just happens you play a bunch of video games, but it's more about communities and stuff. How does Twitch break away from being the video game app to actually, this is Amazon's flagship live stream platform, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing is, it is the case that live streaming and all the live streaming platforms started out as general live streaming and then became more gaming. YouTube live streaming is dominated by gaming. If you look at the top YouTube live streamers, they're gamers. If you back when Facebook was in the mix and you looked at the top Facebook live streamers, they were gamers. Okay. There is something about live streaming where gaming works really well. Okay. It is the fact that there are many people think, oh, Twitch, yeah, that's gaming. The people that use Twitch, they often know that it's so much more. And it's interesting, as you talked about, the demographic is aging. Because, in fact, I'd almost say any 14-year-old, it's almost the opposite. 14-year-olds thinks Twitch is really cool. Like, 25-year-olds think, oh, yeah, Twitch is kind of cool. 35-year-olds are like, oh, Twitch. And 45-year-olds are like, what's Twitch?
Yeah.
Okay. I often tell this story where I was in New York with a friend of mine having his 60th birthday party, and his brother was there, and his brother had just sold a pharmaceutical company that he had started, and it was sold it for like $2 billion. And his 14-year-old son was there. And we were going to a Yankee game, and he found out that I was the CEO of Twitch. And he said, Dad, that's a lot cooler than what you do. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get you. Yeah.
And in fact, invariably what happens to me is someone like my age or 45 might be Twitch. What is Twitch? And then I say, ask your kids. And your kids are like, oh, wow, that's cool that he's CEO of Twitch. That's so much. So I actually think that the younger demographic, they like the diversity of Twitch, and I think they know the diversity of Twitch.
Well, the younger for sure, that gives itself, right? That's fed in. I was more talking about expanding the older, right? As in that's a giant swath. Or is the approach just, listen, as this company goes 5, 20, 30 years, those older guys will know, they will age in and we'll be fine. We'll grow into this.
I think that I would love, let me use an example. I actually think if you take retired people, okay, I think Twitch is exceptionally well suited for retired people.
I have a bunch of them.
They're looking for something to do. I can think of my mother-in-law who used to, she would channel surf, or she would go on QVC, right? And she'd spend money on QVC that she didn't need to be spending. And she wanted something to do, and she wanted community. So I actually think there's this huge opportunity with Twitch when people retire. I just don't see a pathway of getting most 65-year-olds to switch over, because it's just like if you grew up I like
No.
the number of times I got her a tablet and say you can watch Netflix. She wouldn't do it. She would go to her cable on her TV. I would get a smart TV and said you can watch any TV show you want, and she'd be watching whatever was on Jeopardy or this.
Yeah.
So
Creatures of
I
habit.
think it is really tough to like teach folks this new form of entertainment. Once they're set in their ways of their different styles of entertainment. And I'd love it if it happens. There's certainly some that get the magic. Okay. But I haven't seen a pathway where you can really get, all these 45-year-olds or 50-year-olds to understand and grasp the magic at scale. It's just too different. You kind of have to grow up with it.
Facts. I hear that. Yeah. And so I want to go back. I saw something, a clip of you doing an IRL walk. I can't remember what the young lady was who was streaming, and she was talking about your time at NASA, and you got cut off. She asked you, and you said, "There's something I can tell you about Mars," and then it cut off right as you were about to explain why we cannot go back to Mars. Now,
all right,
I have my own theories. Like I'll say, I know something. My stream knows me for having certain, like I have connections in the deep state, so I happen to know about bases on the moon. Right? You can say what you want. I happen to know about that. So I have to ask you: have you interacted with Elon in your time at NASA? Because your tenure overlapped for about 3 years with him starting SpaceX. And why are we not going back to Mars? I have to ask.
I did not interact with Elon while I was at NASA. Why are we not getting back? Why are we not back to Mars, getting to Mars?
To Mars.
Okay. So
depends how far back you want to go.
The foundation of getting to Mars is there's certain windows when you can get there because of the orbits of the planets. Okay. And so it's like every 10 to 15 years, the planets are aligned where the energy required to get to Mars is at a minimum level. But at other times, it takes far more energy to get to Mars and much longer time. So, for example, there's a perfect window, like the next window of getting to Mars is between like 2026 and 2028. Okay. And then I think after that window passes, it's 2040. Okay. And then there's another good one at 2051 or 2052, right? Or something like that. So there are certain windows when you can go to Mars. Now, the problem is to build a plan to go to Mars. There's a lot of technology you need to develop to get all the mass up there and to get people so they can go there for 2 years, right? Because it takes a year or two to get there, right? And then they have to come home. And you have to plan all this. So the reality is, I was like on this panel in 2002, and the plan basically said, look, if we wanted to go in, and I may be being off by 10 years, it may have been 2018 at the time, but we had to start planning 20 years in advance to make it happen, right? So the pitch to Bush was, you should say we're going to go to Mars and put your stake down, and we won't go for 20 years, okay? The problem is, as soon as you have a change in administrations in the U.S. government, okay, unless it's the same party, which often does not happen for a long period of time, the next administration is not going to say, hell yeah, I'm going to spend a lot of money to fulfill the vision that Bush or Trump or Obama or whoever started. Right? Because it takes a lot of money to go to Mars. So let's assume Trump had said, I'm going to Mars, and he would have put the money in the budget, right? What are the chances that Biden would have said, yeah, I'm going to keep putting all that money in the budget to fulfill Trump's dream?
It's almost like we need a deep military industrial complex to run the country for us. And if we only had a figurehead of somebody just to pretend to be the guy in charge. It's almost like, Dan, if that was the case, we'd be able to get some shit done.
So that's my argument about your argument about the deep state that controls everything. If they do control everything, they're sure doing a crappy job.
Oh, they certainly are. Well, no, by appearance, it helps if it appears that way, right?
Maybe, or it could be that they don't really control everything.
Like I said, it's a complex web, the world, as it appears.
We'll see. Listen, 20 years from now, we can have a bet to see if we've gone to Mars in 20 years. And my money says we will not be on the verge of sending a man to Mars in 20 years.
Yeah, not unless we get some more recovered ships. not unless IARPA and DARPA come off some stuff. But I mean, they're finally that's the process disclosure, right? Is you have to slowly come out with stuff. So eventually when people say, oh, it's like that movie and it's a process.
Well, you may not know this, but with the space shuttle came within one vote of being shut down. Okay. And when they built the space shuttle program, because they were worried about this exact problem, about the fact that the next administration, and so the whole strategy of the space shuttle was they had to be far enough along so it couldn't get killed by the next administration. And they made it so that there were contracts in all 50 states that were part of building the space shuttle.
Did not know
So that way, if they were going to kill the space shuttle, you would have vested interest in the senators in all 50 states that were going to get pushback if they killed the space shuttle. And they had a vote, and it kept alive by one vote. And what they did to make sure they never went back is they threw away the plans on the Saturn V rocket. So the Saturn V rocket is the biggest rocket that we use for Apollo. Now, my contention is if there was this deep space, this deep network, well, they lost the plan. So that this is true. That, in fact, the reason they've had to spend so much money with SpaceX and Elon building a new heavy lift launch is they don't have the ability to build a Saturn V. They haven't had that since the 70s because they intentionally got rid of the plans. So that way we had to keep the space shuttle.
That's actually, that's the official line from NASA is that we have the technology to go back to the moon in a nanosecond. This is the quote, but we've lost the technology and it's really, really painful to get back. Is the current reason to why we have not gone back to the moon.
The heavy lift launch, they lost the technology to get that mass into space at that low price. And now
U.S. government, everyone. That was before your time though, right?
They lost it, but I was at NASA when, in fact, in the meeting I was at when they were planning the trip back to Mars, one of the biggest topics was the hardest problem was how long it would take and how much money it would take to basically rebuild the Saturn V. It was literally, and again, this was 2002, and I think they have a launch plan in a few years. So it's been 25 years, and they're finally getting something off the ground that is equivalent to what we had in 1969.
Man, human ingenuity, aren't we great? And we built those pyramids, by the way.
To get back to 69.
Yeah. And if you'll believe it, we made some pyramids. Get out of here. Yeah. I love it. But let me get back to Twitch if I can. So one of the things I experienced in my time here is obviously is a unique thing is because of the crypto is just in Web3. And I want to get your take on where you think Web3 fits into gaming, because that was obviously NFTs and Web3. I mean, it was trolled pretty hard. If you go in any chat that's not a couple crypto ones, and I'm not like bullish in that sense because most of them are Ponzi's, right? Nothing that can be regulated can be. But most of them just trolled on them, right? They were just absolute scams. It was just a reputation. And you actually saw here, I don't know, one of my claims to fame is there's a crypto named SafeMoon that actually started here between Discord and Twitch, right? Their first stream and stuff was on Twitch. And they recently, like last week, got sued by the SEC. Right. And so it comes, and I had like spam messages from people trying to, imitate me to sell programs to my community and stuff. It's a double-edged sword when you have this sort of community vibe because it can be abused, right? Community can be fun, but then the guy who was, doing some of those streams, he got banned because he was, harassing people when they were raiding them, right? And so you can be negative and toxic in community. So how, and sometimes, financially, which is, obviously that's got different kind of level of repercussions for Twitch themselves. How does Twitch kind of deal with that? Going into a world with Web3 where money is going to be linked to fucking everything. Like everything is linked to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Our general strategy around Web3 and my general feeling about Web3 is I do think Web3 is and blockchain is an incredibly interesting and disruptive technology. Much like AI. In general, with incredibly interesting and disruptive technologies, for every really good idea, there are probably 50 bad ideas, especially because there's so many people that are coming to try and take advantage of it and the hype and exploit it and whatever, right? And Web3 is the epitome of that. I think in general, the thing I know is there's going to be some very interesting and disruptive things that come due to Web3. I don't know the time constant, the time frame. Much like with AI, I knew there'd be interesting things in AI. Now, the really interesting stuff didn't come out till 15 years after I got my PhD, even though there was huge hype for a period and then it phased away and then it came back. It is not our job or role to like pick and foresee what is the thing that is going to work.
Yeah.
Because there's so much noise there. Instead, it's let the market develop and then evolve as there are interesting opportunities that have proven where and I may have, thoughts of where it's like most beneficial or where it's not beneficial. But in general, that's why we have not leaned heavily into Web3.
Yeah, I mean, normally you just can't, right? From a legality reason, being as big as Twitch is, I mean, you just can't dance with that, right? They are quite clearly securities, except for, if it isn't, then it doesn't work. And if it does work, it is a security and you guys get sued. So, and, just to add some color from that, that's kind of my wheelhouse is the CBDC and Bank of International Settlements build out. We're at least 5 to 7 years away from those guys doing a unified ledger, which is the project that's actually, the digitalizing of centralized banking finance. They have essentially what they're doing right now. They're at the stage where they're doing, up to 5 country FX trade testing. So they're testing it essentially. And what they're doing is just taking all that public data from crypto as it is currently privatized and just observing it, right? Because North Korea was going to hack regardless.
Let me do this. Doc, I just want to welcome, I have a big group, this guy, Artemis F, that just rated me. I just want to welcome Artemis F. Thanks for coming over and appreciate you being here. So just wanted to welcome them.
But yeah, so it's to the point where they're observing the data, right? North Korea was always going to hack whoever coined, so whatever was going to happen. So you couldn't have, the treasury doing research into central, digital currencies and then getting hacked by North Korea, right? That data is now being consumed by the guys at the Bank of International Settlements, and they're through the Innovation Hub doing their build outs. But they're a ways away. This technology isn't going to be in the mainland. And the way it plugs in essentially is just going to be an API, right? Like you get access and the API goes in. But the use of the technology is going to be huge in gaming when it finally is allowed, right? Like I spent most of 2021 sitting here daydreaming of how we could, do GTA weapons that are NFTs, or you could do, different boxes. And we just spent the whole time just daydreaming about how Twitch could be taken over by NFTs and different crypto functionality. But I mean, the Twitch community repelled so hard from that. Like it was instant ridicule the second you brought up the word NFT. It was actually kind of interesting because you think with like game drops and skins and, the Twitch community would be open to digital, assets being worth money, right? As somebody who just got ripped off $107 for the freaking new Call of Duty, I've paid for some digital assets. But the second you actually called it an NFT, like 95% of Twitch was like, nah, I'm good on this. This is scam. This is Lootbox 2.0.
So let me do this, John. I had told another a streamer that TJ Brown, I would hang out with him.
No worries, bro.
I should probably wrap up soon.
Mad love. I appreciate you taking the time.
What about, should I do a Tyler Childers song for you?
Oh, lay it on me, by the way. Lay it on me. I'm a huge fan.
All right. I know Vixen Venner will appreciate it. So, by the way, can you hear my piano?
Yes, sir.
You hear it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's see what my chat says to see if it's like, yes. All right. So let me just see. I'm going to give you a choice of the Tyler Childers songs. Your choice of, hold on, let me bring it up so I can pick. Oh, come on. There we go. That way my stream will enjoy it since I like to do a lot of his music. There we go. All right. Lady May, In Your Love, Nose on the Grindstone, Universal Sound, White House Road.
Dude, you got to go White House Road. You gotta go to White House Road. I'll tell you this though, I've cried around a campfire many a time to Notes of the Grindstone with some grown men.
Yeah, I love that song. Yeah, I'm gonna start it and then check to see if the mix is good. There we go. Early in the morning when the sun does rise, laying in bed with bloodshot eyes. All right, so what's kind of loud? Piano too loud. That's why I was doing this. Okay.
Oh no, that's pretty freaking good, dude.
All right, hold on. Let me bring the piano down.
Right, Tyler? It's good.
All right, let's see. I'm just gonna sing it to see how the mix is, and then keep going. Yeah. Early in the morning when the sun does rise, lay in the bed with bloodshot eyes. All right, is that good? All right, here we go. I'm just going to get going. We're good.